No, I'm kidding. I won't bore you with the slow-mo. Let's get back to work. Now you might be wondering, isn't branding about colors, fonts, voice, and overall visual strategy? Well, yes, that's part of it. But when we start with the right audience, we have everything we need to make smarter visual decisions. We understand the exact flavors, colors, imagery, and overall design decisions that resonate deeply with our chosen audience. If we don't anchor this visual direction in our clearly defined audience and message, we risk mixing unrelated styles in ways that confuse rather than clarify. This brings us to the juicy part of branding, the actual voice. This is where, as designers, it's like a because audience rarely have a answer on imagery. This ultimately is their decision, but it's our job to guide them effectively. One of the key parts to guiding clients effectively is the initial phase. I like to kick off my projects with a mood board that sets the tone for what they want to achieve. This is a powerful tool that brings a collection of visual references, this mood boards allows us to quickly explore and communicate visual directions. They anchor decisions in concepts aligned with the strategy we've developed so far. A mood board lets clients quickly see alternatives and begin to shape the decisions visually. Because visual branding isn't objective at all, there are literally hundreds of valid ways to convey the same message. So the mood board stage lets us broadly explore visual options in a way that still makes strategic sense and moves the brand forward. Mood boards allows us to anchor certain visual decisions that will be initial parts of our opening conversations. This enables us to gather as much information as possible so the visual alternatives we create are aligned with our strategy. Once we've identified specific interesting aspects of the visual representation, we anchor them in a matrix. This matrix positions different references along with concepts in 4 quadrants. Those quadrants are defined by the designer to help the client map polar concepts of the brand. What do I mean by polar? This has to do with finding opposite aspects that still speak about the brand, but allow the client some freedom to make decisions. For example, one axis might be experimental versus the other structured. Another axis might be sophisticated versus spontaneous. In the end, there will be references placed within those quadrants that help the client understand the different alternatives and what it means visually for the brand. With this method, the client has a clear overview of the alternatives, making the decision process easier and quicker. In this phase, we begin defining the actual positioning of the brand. We aim to lightly take that position so we can create our own language and communication from it. The reason I put the mood board first instead of the brand voice is because it sets a visual tone for the brand and downloads what the client has in mind immediately, which provides the alternative to guide them more effectively throughout the process. At this point, we've established the target audience, how we speak to that audience, and we have explored initial concepts. We now have a visual direction and references that gives us some room to play. This takes us to the next stage, which is the brand voice. Brand voice is related to the tone we defined earlier, but that previous tone of the actual material was from the sales perspective, not the marketing perspective. Brand voice is about how we want to be perceived. It's not the tone we use to pierce our message, but rather how our brand presents itself overall. It's about the feeling we want to evoke when we speak as a brand. It could be provocative, sharp, elusive, dreamy, whatever combination aligns with our brand values. These technical details will ultimately be documented to speak about the brand. This entails different aspects of the brand strategy, but is primarily driven by visual force. It's not the conceptual level, which we define first, this is about the visual level, where our brand voice manifests in tangible design choices. For example, if our brand voice is provocative, we might use stark contrast in our imagery, dramatic angles in our photography, or bold, attention-grabbing layouts in our social media posts. For example, a financial consultancy with a provocative voice might break convention by using vibrant colors and dynamic layouts instead of the typical conservative blues and structured grids. That's why we are defining brand voice at this stage. It directly influences these visual decisions. At this stage, we are armed with many resources to make those visual decisions, essentially creating what is commonly known as brand identity. This identity includes the more visible parts like fonts, imagery, colors, elements at the front end of the brand, directly speaking from the strategic backend we have defined earlier. Now we enter the sketch phase. After we've defined these values, which is a phase long enough for its own video, and it's super iterative and open, we start sketching and producing the actual visual brand identity. This is where the fun begins for beginners. Beginners actually think brand identity starts here. And yeah, it's fun, but it's also funneled by a previous stage, the one we defined on the other video, which is richer and crucial for the business. Brand identity creation is deeply nurtured by that initial strategic phase. We move into creating visual proposals and many alternatives based on what we've imagined throughout the process. Here, as designers, we draw from our experiences and apply all the information we've gathered to create precise sketches. Consider our residential architecture studio example of the previous video. Having established our target audience and communication framework, we can now translate this strategy foundation into compelling visual identity. The design exploration phase involves developing both conceptual and concrete visual expressions. These range from abstract interpretations that capture the essence of architectural space to more literal representations, perhaps a sophisticated mark that evokes a structural form and spatial harmony. We begin introducing new concepts and ideas, mixing and matching all the characteristics we've gathered so far. This results in a symbolic emblem defining our brand, the condensation of our work, otherwise known as the logo. I have a strong opinion about the logo. Depending on the maturity of the actual brand, the logo, the actual importance of that logo varies greatly. If the brand is already established, omnipresent, and in people's minds, like big brands, the logo becomes extremely important and should be handled professionally and carefully. But if the brand is new, the logo is almost non-important. Of course, we want it to be presentable and memorable, but realistically, people won't initially remember our brand simply because of our logo. They'll remember other things, primarily, people, interactions, feelings, how we actually make them feel. As the brand matures, this symbol will repeatedly be printed in people's minds, increasing its importance over time. But when the brand is young, we often pay too much attention to the logo. And this isn't crucial at all. Many other aspects contribute far more to the brand success than repeated logo iteration. Although, having cleared up that the logo matter, we'll dive deeper into a few characteristics that are very important to producing something memorable and aligned with our values. And here I'm speaking about the trifecta of fonts, colors, and imagery. These three go hand in hand. They appear in 90% of our communication, and every visual interaction involves these three aspects. Starting with typography, these are divided into categories. When selecting a certain category, you signal specific emotions while discarding others. For example, choosing a serif font could signal elegance, reliability, maturity, craft, refinement, or even luxury. These are characteristics raised or enhanced by the specific typeface itself and speaks loudly and clearly about these characteristics. Similarly, choosing a sans serif might signal something technical, neutral, precise, calculated, and accurate. When selecting a sans serif font, you discard the more fluid and dynamic sensations that other categories evoke. These are the two main font categories we work with, and they can definitely be mixed and used in different aspects of the brand. This decision isn't set in stone, it isn't a hard science. And ultimately, the decision depends on the sensation the typeface produces visually on screen or within Imagery. Of course, there are many types of typefaces that can also be included, like monospaced, display, and decorative fonts that serve specific purposes. For example, a script font signals elegance, movement, and fluidity, while display fonts can convey uniqueness, boldness, or a specific era or style. There are also variable fonts that provide flexibility in weight, width, and other attributes within a single font file. I like to say that typefaces are the dress of your brand. Having the right typeface is very important, but it isn't everything. It's how you dress yourself for a movie theater or a wedding, right? It signals parts of your brand and evokes various emotions and details. But the final completion of the brand experience relies on how you also express other parts, like colors and imagery. These two elements are equally essential and complement each other. Colors are relative. The psychology of color might say green relates to money, forward thinking, or climate change projects. That's a fine assumption, but the caveat is green can definitely serve many other purposes. Its meaning constantly evolves depending on how it's combined with other colors. To effectively address this, we rely more on references, what other brands are doing, rather than on the hard science of color. Yes, yellow sparks joy and positivity, but this isn't set in stone. What is our selected palette actually communicating? Do the colors signal refinement and elegance, or warmth and easygoingness? We must pinpoint not only what we want to evoke, but also what we don't want. Considering this, we have tools to identify palettes not aligned with our values or the message we are communicating. Finally, there's Imagery. It literally paints a picture of what the brand's universe looks like. This universe contains more information, more tangible and worldly elements than typefaces or verbal messages floating in the air. Imagery grounds our message. It says, I will bring you down to earth into the experience I want you to have with us. Understanding Imagery helps us search for the right images, graphics, or objects we include in the brand. The brand's sensation is completed visually by Imagery, complementing all previous aspects we've discussed. Imagery sets the mood at first glance. One thing is saying something in an ad or a post, another is evoking that feeling through an image. This image is more direct, faster, and clearer. They say an image is worth 1,000 words, and this is definitely true. But nowadays, I'm also convinced that video amplifies the effect images had 10 or 20 years ago. we need to carefully define not only what types of videos to include, but also their style, tone, and production quality. This extends to motion design as well. If the brand incorporates graphics, shapes, or illustrative elements, we must establish clear guidelines for how these elements move and interact. Animation style can communicate as much about the brand's personality as static design elements. The way we bring these elements to life through motion helps reinforce the brand's character and emotional impact. After developing your brand's visual identity, the next step is your brand extension. It is expanding your brand's presence across various touchpoints. This phase focuses on creating a cohesive brand experience regardless of where your customers interact with us. Brand extension involves adapting your visual identity to different platforms and mediums while maintaining consistency. This, of course, includes, web design, social media presence, packaging, graphics, and, any other customer touchpoints. Each extension should feel like part of the same family while being, optimized for its specific context. For our residential architecture studio, for example, brand extension might include something like, how our visual identity translates to project proposals, site signage, or digital platforms, right? And even how the physical office space, embodies the brand values. The typography, color palette, and imagery we've defined should flex, approximately across these applications while remaining recognizable to us, right? Successful brand extension requires a balance between consistency and flexibility. Too rigid and the brand feels, forced in certain contexts. Too flexible and it kind of loses its identity. Creating comprehensive guidelines that addresses various applications helps maintain this balance and ensures our brand remains cohesive while adapting to different needs. We are nearing the end of the branding process. The overall brand presentation, its visual appearance, must align with your vision for the brand. While perfect alignment might not be possible due to input from other collaborators, for example, the final result should match the feelings and the sensations you envision when seeing the brand as a whole. This emotional resonance serves as a final validation, indicating we've successfully completed the brand building journey. We've covered who our target audience is, the tools we'll use to deliver our message, how to develop the brand's core concepts, and how to create the brand's visual identity. But you might have noticed that I don't focus on tools, techniques, or hard skills that much. That's because there are millions of courses and information about them. I won't share any of that because the topic is not only, oversaturated, but also it's honestly a little bit boring. Soft skills, on the other hand, and it's the actual angle of this video, provides a door to express your design skills through your own lens, through your experience, right? We cover how to ask the right questions, establish the right processes, and ultimately plan your career long-term. I hope you found this helpful. If you want to touch base on any aspect of your brand, I offer a free consultation call to thoroughly examine your brand's current status and the future direction of it. Link in the description. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.